Welcome, listeners. I have Alyssa Dver with us today. She is the founding CEO of both the American Confidence Institute and ERG Leadership Alliance. She's renowned as a confidence expert and speaking pro who blends brain science with bold insight to spark lasting and personal cultural change. A two times TEDx speaker, real confidence podcaster, and award-winning author of 8 books. She was also named top 10 pioneering women's in business by Chief Navigators and the Stevie Ward's Gold winner for achievement in diversity and inclusion. Alyssa, welcome.
Thank you, Julie. I'm so happy to be with you always.
Always. Yeah, we've done some things over the years. Alyssa's been kind enough to have me on and talking about ERG leadership through the lens of allyship. And Alyssa's team publishes some really cutting edge research on the topic of employee resource groups. So I'm fascinated to hear what's new. But before we get into all that, Alyssa, how did you get here? Of all things in the world, why did you decide to focus on ERGs?
Because somebody very senior told me that I was crazy to do it. And I just, as an entrepreneur, when somebody says you're crazy or, out of your mind, you're like, I'm going to show them. So no, that did happen, but that wasn't the reason I pursued it. After a really long corporate life, I was a chief marketing officer for a lot of companies, particularly a lot of tech companies.
Mm,
And left to start entrepreneurial things. One of the things I did was the American Confidence Institute, as you noted, and it's all about the brain science of confidence. And at the heart of that is this need to belong. Now, when I would say the need to belong, and good old Maslow, 1940s research, people would be like, "Oh, tell me about that," right? Today, we use the word belonging, and everyone's like, "Okay, oh, it's important, it's important, it's important." But there's brain science reasons why it's important. And back in 2018, 2017, when I was kind of exploring this idea and presenting to all these ERGs, and I would say, you guys are kind of cool. It's an interesting leadership structure and preparation outside of a business school, right? It wasn't academic, it was within a nonprofit, profit, whatever it might be. And yet you're not really getting any support. Like, I don't understand how this is working. Why is it working? And people were like, it gives us a sense of belonging. And it was like that ding, 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 ding in my head that said, this is
mm,
where it can happen. And then I realized also the kind of people that were doing this work. And I just love them. They're
mm,
compassionate, they're open-minded, the same kind of people that you've built your career around, right? And I thought, what can I do to help them? What can I do
mm,
to make these entities more successful, help these leaders who are volunteering, make it easier for them to do the work, right? All that. And that's when I, approached some of these senior talent experts, and they were like, why would you do that? There's no money in ERGs. I said, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because these are really important entities and nobody's paying attention to them.
mm.
And lo and behold, fast forward now 6 years. I laugh when people tell me there's no money, and I'm like, oh, all right, more for me. And more importantly, more for us to grow our organization that now has 25,000 members. I'm like, okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah. And isn't that just such a downfall of capitalism? It has to be about money, and you did prove them wrong. I agree.
That much
Employee
I
resource,
love.
right? Like employee resource groups, right? And you know the backstory on this better than I do, but 1970s, is that when they kind of got started? Was it Xerox?
Even before that, 1960s is when
Yeah.
Xerox historically is documented. The Black Man's Caucus was the first, and it
Mhm.
spread from there very quickly. But uh, Xerox is one of our very dear partners. We do a lot of collaboration with them. The head of DEI that recently just left, she actually was there for a while. She's the person who's actually quoted on the bottom of my book here. And
Um,
they are reinventing themselves all the time. And of course, with what's going on in the world right now, everybody's in that kind of recalibration, reinventing. A lot of people say reviving, and I am like, be careful. That means they died. They didn't die. They just certainly need to go in a different direction or a different process these days.
yeah. And the work's evolved over time. I mean, what we were doing in the 60s, we're not doing in the 2020s. And so I agree with you. Of all the things of diversity, equity, and inclusion work that have sunsetted or pivoted. I won't use the word revived, Melissa, but have shifted with this administration. ERGs I've found to be kind of a glowing beacon of optimism that most companies are keeping their employee resource groups and growing them. And legally, they are interested in growing membership because you cannot exclude potential members, aka allies. And so I feel like this is like this silver lining of this weird mess we're in right now. What are you seeing from your vantage point?
Yeah, I keep saying it's not a silver lining because I don't want to make it sound like there's some good that came out of this horrific garbage that we're going through.
True.
And yes, I did say horrific garbage and I mean it. But at the same time, there's been some really interesting, these ERGs, I say, is full of paradox. It's like the most fascinating set of management paradoxes. And so when the directives came out, everyone panicked, right? And ERGs actually were named in the original and subsequent directives. So
Mhm.
they didn't know what to make of it, but we have consulted with a ton of legal experts on this, and everyone agrees that first, that ERGs are, you should have them. They're good to have. They've shown all the positive benefits, not just to the employees themselves, but to the profitability and productivity numbers that have come out since, the engagement numbers and all those, which we can certainly talk about. But yes, they have to be more inclusive. And here's where it got sticky. It wasn't just about inviting allies and other people to your program events. And that's how people kind of interpreted it, just make them inclusive. You actually have to make it completely inclusive, meaning if
Mhm.
you are, let's say, a man and you want to be a leader in the women's ERG, that has to be allowed as part of the process. So what resulted from that was a tightening of all the governance, which we've been harking on since the beginning. Like, gotta have governance, not because you want to control people, but because you want to have equity. And equity means budgeting is fair, the way that people apply and run these has to be fair. And so that inclusion message is really elevated. And the good thing that came out of all of this, silver lining, whatever you want to call it, was that all of a sudden the executives who had no clue what these ERGs were all of a sudden like, what's an ERG? Like there was a panic. And so we got a lot of lift. The industry, got a lot of lift into the executive suite. And we've been doing more executive sponsor training than I can even tell you because they're being tapped and they don't even know what these things are, let alone what to do.
That's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, because I can't imagine it was top on the list of the executive team's priority list before. I'm seeing that in my work too, as new leaders come on, or new ownership comes on, that there's this curiosity like, oh, let me come to that employee resource group strategy session. Oh, I want to sit in on that. Oh, what is the sponsor doing? And so yeah, to your point, it's not about micromanaging, hopefully. It's more about visibility, and this is an opportunity for a visible part of our important work to get more visible at that senior level.
Agree.
Alyssa, I know you put together a trends report every year, so I'd love for you, if there is like new things that our listeners should be paying attention to, especially as we're beginning, 2026. A lot of organizations are, of course, planning programming for the year. And here, Jesus, it's not just programming, there's a lot more to it than that. I heard you say governance. So having like a clear, I would call that like a strategy, a purpose, a mission, et cetera, executive sponsor, a leadership, roles and responsibilities, kind of how long people stay on. I know that's something talk to
The
leaders like.
basics, right? But, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, but they haven't established this as kind of been an informal and some more formalized policy. But tell us more. Like what do you see new that people should be paying attention to this year?
well, there's a lot, right? And I'm just going to give you some like examples, but by all means, and I don't, it is not a commercial, but not only is the trends report free every year, and it's based on we do a massive impact study every year. And so we take that data plus the thousands of people we interact all the time. We have all kinds of strategy meetings with people who run ERGs around the world. And I don't mean just the group leaders, but the actual oversight manager. So we have just a huge amount of data. That trends report comes out in December every year. So the 2026 has been out. Download it off the site if you want to read about all. Um, I'm going to flash the book here because this is the version 3 of the book now already. In 3 years, we've updated it 3 times to keep up with the times. But the back of the book,
Tell us the title for people that
oh,
can't read.
ERG Intelligence, and the subtitle is whatever a leader needs to know about employee groups. Very skinny book, very quick read. It's written FAQ style, so you can pick and choose what you even want to read. But the Appendix A in here, there's 2 appendices, and the first one is a policy guide, which is all the governance, and we overhauled it given what's going on. We had all the legal experts weigh in on it because governance is both at the oversight level as well as the group level, right? So
Mhm.
and they're different. There's overlap. There's synergy there. So big deal. Get on it. And if you haven't started one, use the template. If you have one, use the template to check and make sure you got your ducks in a row. But
Yeah,
aside
it's a
from
good
that,
guide. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So and it's when you say trends and news, yeah. Well, 2 years ago, every trends report has a theme. 2 years ago, we started saying metrics, metrics, metrics. And all of a sudden, everyone's like, metrics, right? So, again, at the group level and the oversight level, and here's what's really been the big shift. And I'm really happy with this shift because for years, there was pressure put on the leaders. Now, these group leaders are volunteers, and it may be somebody coming out of, marketing or accounting or sales who's never led a group, let alone ever done any analytics. And the leaders were being told, show the business impact. And they're like, okay. And what does that mean? Where do I get the data? And often the data is locked in HR because it's
Yep.
privacy regulated or just territorial or whatever it might be. So there was an impossibility there. And a lot of leaders were very stressed out, even burned out, because the pressure to show business impact was just a ridiculous ask.
I just had that happen last week with a
You
client.
did?
The
Oh,
people, but not, I would say people not directly in business facing roles, that they're more in operations, day to day,
mhm.
more technical roles or like business impact. Like, I don't even have like that acumen to explain or that access to data to show that correlation.
Right. And then there's been a lot of distraction, right? All these pillars, the strategic pillars of the DEI or the HR group. And they're like, align with the pillars, but the pillars aren't always business outcome based, right? So, like community, it's lovely. You should support your community if you can through your ERGs, but that's not a business objective necessarily. So this gap of how do we show business outcome, business result, business tie is all of a sudden, the hottest thing on everybody's ERG list. But there's a difference at the individual group level versus the overall ERG. Some people call it the program, but that's very misleading. The overall ERGs together. So, for example, we say at the overall level, if you're the oversight manager, you're probably reporting to HR, you're probably reporting to somewhere you can get access to retention data, recruiting data, that's at least some indications of trends. You may not have perfect visibility about every employee, but you can start to see trends. You can start to see engagement studies now are including a question that says in engagement surveys, I should say annual ones, are you or are you not active in an ERG? And you can see the
Mm.
differences. And we tend to see 10% or more, up to 15, 16% more engagement with people who are in healthy ERGs. So
Mhm.
there's data at that level that's now starting to push up, and that's great. At the group level, stop asking them for that data. They don't have it, but they do have trending data about is their membership growing, which unto itself isn't telling. But if their membership is growing, their participation rates in their events is growing, and they're tying their programming, these things that they do, to something that's meaningful and measuring it, that shows that you have progress and health. It's a healthier situation for that group. So we can show that those groups are starting to plug in their programming to why am I doing this? What do I expect to get out of it? Measuring it, learning. And here's the thing, it's a professional development leadership pipeline. So if you're starting to see these group leaders getting hired into better jobs, getting promotions, that's also a really good metric at a group level.
I
So
love that
those are
one.
the kinds of things that have all of a sudden started percolating up finally. And I think once we have the metrics like everything else in business, you're going to see a shift in people taking them seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So I'm taking away governance, a clear structure, a clear mission, a clear purpose, senior level engagement, metrics that tell the story of growth, of engagement, of business impact. Alyssa, what else? Like if you had a magic wand and everyone's ERG was working perfectly, what else would you want for them?
Oh my gosh, Julie, we don't have time on a quick pot here, but we'll tackle some. And again, there's 12 trends in the report, so there's a lot in there. We do a lot of global work, and global, sometimes people think, well, global, you should have, translation, you should have um, the ability for people to culturally adjust to whatever the content is. That's all good. But now we're seeing a lot more respect for time zones
Mhm.
because
Yep.
if I do something in the US, for example, at in the middle of the day and half the world can't plug in there because they're sleeping, giving them a video of it is not the same,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't have the same experience or respect level. So doing things twice or three times if you need to. Not just having translation and cultural awareness, but really almost designing programming so that it's more local and having local ambassadors execute it or at least influence it, right? So really being respectful of that. And hand in hand with that is accessibility. So it's not just globalness, but in every ERG, you have people who are neurodiverse. You have people who are may have disabilities, whatever there's a whole raft of them. So designing programming in a way that's respectful of all people, and we can say that's inclusive, but I don't want to lose the meaning in this, is that do less or fewer programs, right? You don't have to do 100, but make sure the ones that you're doing are going to meet the business objectives, but also meet your members' needs. And
Mm.
that globally has taken on a new meaning. And I think the more respect, because even if you are, again, a US based ERG, you're going to have international people in there, right? So, and I see international people, who move from international places to the US. You have a women's group based in Boston, where I am. You're going to have people from all cultures and right. So being aware of that
Mhm.
is starting to finally. That's my magic wand. Is like don't just assume one program fits all because it never does.
No.
So
No, and
that's a
that's
big
that's
one.
been a problem with DEI overall, that it's been back in the heyday even of DEI. Used to get feedback from my global clients. Like, it's great that you're bringing a US perspective, but I don't think that's really going to be the same context that we're going to see in Asia Pacific or Europe even, or especially EAME, like Africa, Middle East, etc. So yeah, I love that. Just that's a simple thing though, respectful of time zones. And a lot of us don't even do the time zone math. In Asia, we're
No,
usually 12-ish
no,
hours. We're opposite, right?
no.
So
You
like
you you
most of
watch
our,
you watch the video because you're sleeping
yeah,
when we're doing it. You watch the video. That's very
you're not
disrespectful.
important.
It's
Yeah.
not the same experience. So I'm gonna call out the elephant in both our rooms, which is DEI is not a function.
Hmm.
Right? And I think that what ERGs have realized is they have the ability to make this appreciation for it happen without shoving it down people's throats in the form of, conscious bias training and things that
Hmm.
basically call people out, right? So making this more pervasive in the organization. Now, how we do this, we make sure that the middle managers in particular, I said the executives are now starting to wake up a little bit more, and that's because the numbers are helping them. But the middle managers who are like, Julie works for me, and I'm not going to give Julie an hour to go to an ERG event because Julie's got to do her job because I'm lean right now. I don't have a lot of people. And figuring out to have that conversation in a way that that manager understands if Julie takes an hour and goes, this is what Julie's going to get better at doing. And so this middle management layer that has been a huge obstacle since the get-go, the frozen middle, call it whatever you want, that's a big piece of lifting these ERGs, but also making this diversity, equity, inclusion real. Because I think what people start to realize is it's not it's not somebody coming in and being like, you are not inclusive. It's more like, hey, I want to go and become a better leader. And for me to do this, I have to be in a psychologically safe, nurturing environment. And I'm going to bring that back to my group and my job. And so I could be better at serving your team, Mr. and Mrs. Middle
Yeah.
Manager.
What are
And
those
by the way,
skills?
I want it in my performance review because I am going to spend time in leadership development there, and I want you to be aware of what I'm doing, and I want everyone else to be aware of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a huge
I
change.
think that's a huge hindrance because one, I think a lot of ERGs, like we talked about, the strategic part, the visibility part, the metrics part, are really important pieces. But most people inside organizations see it as the programming arm. Like that's the thing that's most visible, right? The cultural celebrations, the events, the community programs, et cetera. And where I see folks struggle is just like you said, I go, my manager sees it on my calendar, or have to ask permission to go to one, which seems very silly. And it's like, oh, well, what are you going to be doing there? What are you going to learn? And so just to be proactive with, hey, these are the skills that we're building, by the way, that help somebody be, better equipped for a promotion and develop leadership skills that are seen on the performance reviews. I think absolutely. Um, Unless I still, you know, I think we kind of, I struggle when working with ERGs. I'm trying to like push up the strategic thinking, like, let's think first about purpose and goals and metrics and alignment and senior leaders. And they're like, but what about next month's program? It's like
Yeah,
we just
right.
move right towards the weeds. And it's like, stay up here for a little bit longer. But it is a big part of it, the programming piece. So do you have thoughts on that? Like what do you wish was what do you think is working well with ERG programming and what do you wish you could change?
Okay, well, we've mentioned two of them already. One is being more strategic, doing fewer programs that really fit with the members' needs and the business objectives, and then doing conscious metric. This is what I'm aiming for, this is what I'm going to measure, and then getting it measured, right, and reporting it. So all of that is part of the programming wish list. Uh, Intersectionality is a big deal these days still, meaning that groups are getting together to co-sponsor things so that the members who do identify with multiple, we all do, it's every member has multiple identities, can go to programs which aren't colliding with each other, right? Like, the women's group is like Black History Month is in February. Maybe we should do something together and not do our own stuff, right? So that's happening and that's great. I think programming also doesn't have to be an event, right? It can be a mentoring program, it can be a book club, it can be a
Mm,
thousand different things that,
well,
again, are serving the needs of the members and subsequently the business to provide it. I'm going to give you one of my favorite examples. I have thousands of examples, but this is the top of the list. It's academic. A university that during COVID, one of their most active ERGs was the Linen Arts ERG
hmm,
or fiber arts. I always say lit arts, fiber arts. And I would say to the oversight manager, I don't understand why. And she was like, look, these are people who knit and crochet, and during COVID, they're doing it in their houses. At least they get online and they talk and they're knitting or they're doing whatever they're doing. And they are really feeling a connection and belonging, and it's relaxing, mental health, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, excellent, excellent. Like, why wouldn't you support that as a positive, you know, ERG-like thing to do? It's not an event. It's just every week they get together for an hour and that's what they do. They catch up and so I think we have to broaden our brains on what programming looks like. Again, making it more inclusive globally and otherwise and accessible. So I think those are all really important things. But I also want to use programming as a way of educating the executive sponsors and those middle managers. And what
yeah.
that means is including them, telling them, here's our calendar. It would be great if you could come to these two or three things.
Just tell them what to do. That's what I get often. They're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm so afraid. Well, I went once and I didn't feel like I should be there. Like, be prescriptive. Yes.
Yep. So step up and look at senior vice president or C-suite. I mean, I just trained C-suite people all day, every day in my life these days. And I'm like telling them, do not go to every event. Ask the leaders which ones they want you at. And then when you're going to an event, you tell your direct reports, I'm going to this event, come with me. Right?
Exactly.
Do that, and that changes the game completely. So that's my magic wand, at least. I'm sure there's 10 other things I'd like, but that's enough to start.
Yeah, no, we've got enough ingredients in the magic ERG soup mix. I think. So, yeah, I agree. It's funny. I got two speaking requests yesterday, so recency bias in action. But one was both were for ERG summits, which I know I'm sure you have thoughts on. Pros and cons to having a once a year big, splashy event. good visibility, a lot of resourcing is dedicated towards that, and a lot of time is spent towards that. Where, to your point, a book club, a community thing that's spread throughout the year might have more impact. But just sample size of two for these two speaking engagements I got asked for. One was about intersectionality, so bingo on that one. Because identity politics is a very real thing, especially right now. And, to, have race and gender and ethnicity and age and disability all be different conversations, there's a lot of overlap or intersections amongst those that we can speak to. And the second request was for allyship, which I'm well known for, so that isn't a huge surprise. But I do see increasingly employee resource groups are coming to me and saying, hey, we want to do something across all of our employee resource groups together about how to be a better ally across differences. And so I think intersectionality and allyship are two themes. If you haven't explored those, really think about how that ties to your strategy and your business metrics and how to get speaks to senior leaders too, because they're often the allies you want to plug in. And this is the conundrum I think a lot of companies struggle with is like in-group dialogue for psychological safety is very different than in and out group psychological safety where allies come in because issues and personal experiences and sometimes traumatic things that have happened aren't appropriate sometimes when allies in the room. So uh, last question for you, Alyssa, like thoughts on that, like when and how to engage allies. I mean, technically they're always involved, but if you had to be really specific with kind of norms to manage that psychological safety.
Yeah, no, it's a kind of a two-part question. So the easier part of it is groups themselves should be allies to each of the other groups. And the way to
Right.
do that is, and the way I do it at least, is when we're doing program planning, we have a blueprint. We have 6 blueprints that we help the leaders do the functions very quickly and easily, but in a very professional way. The blueprint for programming has all these things that we've been talking about, the metrics and yada yada. I say to people, look, pick 2 programs you're going to do for the year, just 2, just plan 2 for now. And then let's hear what everybody else is doing and pick a third program that you are going to ally with. And allyship in the group to group relationship can be you can co-fund it, you can just attend it, you can promote it, or you can do all the above, right?
Hmm.
So simple. Like pick one and say, I like that program and I'm going to make sure that my members come, my leadership team is going to come and we're going to promote it. That's an ally right there. All right. It's not the end all be all. Like allyship, as you know more than anyone, it's about advocacy and being in the room when speaking up in the room when the group that you're allying or the people you're allying for are not there, right? But showing that kind of support and saying, I am not gay, but I'm going to go to the Pride Parade. That's an ally. That's a beautiful thing that you can do as a women's group, or you can do as a African American group, or whatever group definitions you have. So that's the easier answer. I think the bigger answer becomes, you know, who qualifies to be an ally and what do we want them to do, and being very clear about that. And I think that is that's yet to be pervasive, right? Like I know when you go into organizations, you're like, okay, here's what you're going to do, but not every organization is willing to step up to that yet. Do I see it coming? I hope so. And the reason I say I hope so is because until we get the ERG stuff kind of a little bit more grounded, cemented, institutionalized, professionalized, I think there's going to be this hesitation. Like way back in the day, there were programs, I know I'm aware of them, that were like very formal allyship programs. I can't imagine today they would work because the ERG stuff is still kind of
Hmm.
discombobulated. Now, with that said, as long as we're expanding the definitions of who can participate, who can lead a group, and I said earlier, being a leader that you're of a group that you're not demographically aligned to, or that is going to happen more and more because the professional development opportunities have to be inclusive, right?
Hmm.
And that's okay, but you can have an ally help lead or co-lead a group,
Yeah.
right? I'd like to see more of that in the future. I think that's a tremendous. Executive sponsors are being rotated so that they
Hmm.
don't just sponsor the program, the groups that they are affiliated, aligned with, right? A
Yeah, that
demographic.
they feel comfortable with.
Right. So they're learning more, and that's starting to happen. We're seeing some of that happening. Uh, safe spaces. Let's talk about it. You use that kind of phrase, and I don't think people really understand what that means. It means that whatever you're going to do, whether it's a book club or it's going to be a particular event, people in the past defined a safe space as just us, just me and my people,
Mhm.
right? No allies, no executive sponsors, and those are illegal now, right? So how do you create a safe space? We get asked that a lot. Psychologically safe, but just a safe space. Can we process some of this horrific, egregious
Mhm.
stuff that's happening in a safe space?
Yeah.
The Hispanic community right now
Yeah,
really
especially right now. Yeah.
doesn't want your opinion. They want, and I don't mean you, Julie, doesn't want anyone's opinion. They just want
Yeah.
to
It's
process
life or
this.
death for them.
Right. I
Yeah.
remember during the George Floyd time, the Black communities were like, get out of our face. Like, we just want to talk. We don't want to educate you. We want to be focused on
Mhm.
processing this by ourselves with our people. And I really do respect that. Unfortunately, with the current legislation, you can't tell somebody that they can't come to something that's being sponsored by the company that eliminates, is excluding anyone. So how do you do that? And I say by topic.
Hmm.
And here's my favorite example. It's kind of a funny one, but if the women's group wants to talk about menopause and some men want to come, you're going to have to assume then they're not coming to be smartasses, that they're coming because they want to learn because somebody, maybe their
Yeah.
spouse or sister or whoever, they want to learn.
Mhm.
So be okay with that. Now, can you
Mhm.
talk woman to woman about menopause in that room? Why not? Why not?
Yeah. They're there. They signed up for it. Yeah. Yeah, I think to me it's about setting expectations. And what I've found, if you do have a handful of allies that want to come to an event that's really focused on a singular issue that affects a singular identity or identities, that you're here to listen, to learn, not to take up space or to center yourself. And usually if you give that firm coaching and expectation setting on the front end, they listen. And I don't want to
Oh,
be difficult, but it's like, hey, because we've all seen it happen. Somebody comes and explains from their perspective, and it's like, okay, you just killed the whole vibe for the group.
that's right. That's right. Well, and, expectations, absolutely. That it kind of is synonymous with governance, and people don't think of
Right.
it that way either. I get hysterical calls from organizations. Oh my God, a men's group. I'm like, yeah, and oh, you can't have a men's group. We can't have these religious groups. We can't have this. I'm like, well, we can't have. What does that mean? Do you have
Mhm.
it in your governance? Is there a legal something, a policy
Mhm.
doc, something that says what they're who can apply and who can't. And
Mhm.
again, that's a fuzzy gray area today. But if you put in your governance that these are the expectations of the groups, these are, you're going to start a group, you have to have these things in place, you have to do these things. You're going to take money from the mothership, this is what the mothership wants in exchange. If you're going to come to this meeting, like you said, this is how we roll, right? And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, we've got to get tighter on things like that, but that's kind
Yeah.
of good, I think.
Yeah. I just interviewed Kenji Yoshino and David Glasgow about their new book, How Equality Wins. And they actually have a strong argument for exactly what we just talked about, faith-based groups, men's groups. I mean, hey, if there's a need in the community, and there's again the need for a strategy, a purpose, metrics that show that, folks are needing this group for community, have at it, right? It should be employee led and in company governed to your point. But who's to say that we can't have those groups? Where I struggle with it, Alyssa, I'm sure you've seen this over the years, is like a women's group starts, and then like the men are like, well, we're starting a men's group. It's like, okay, well, that's like retaliatory. That's not out of need. Like that feels a little like
Well, again,
competitive.
if though you the requirements to get, and the oversight managers, I'm constantly reminding them, you hold the purse strings, right? Like, so
Yeah,
if you're going to give money, as long as it's equitable, and you say you have to have this kind of structure, these many people as
right.
members, this kind of reporting on a monthly basis, you set the rules, and it's equitable, then if the men want to do it, let them do
Yeah,
it, of course.
yeah.
I mean, I have some of the most inane or seemingly inane examples. Like I had the Boston mayor's office for years and years and years had Toastmasters as their most prized ERG, and I was like, Toastmasters. But the argument was professional development. common need. They get together and they talk about, how do we get better? What can we do? How do we get sponsorship? All these things. And they're like, that's an ERG. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of is. You have, I said, the fiber arts as an example, Bible studies group. I won't call them out because I don't know if they still have it, but they had it for 50 years. And it's a bank. It's a big bank. And banks are the most regulated in the world, right? And they had the Bible study group was one of their first. It started actually the same time their women's group did. Huge. It's a huge and it's very successful, and people come together and they talk about stuff. If you have employees, and look, we've had these groups in some form in the workplace forever. I mean, Weight Watchers, think of it. It's an ERG, right? We need people to share the common experience to get us to our goals, to feel like we're not losing our marbles, that we have similar struggles and challenges, but also that we can get support. Somebody's been through it that can help me. Great. Why is that such a wacko idea for people to embrace? I don't know. It doesn't have to be demographics, of course. It can be hobbies, it could be religion, it could be community. There's community support groups, that they go out and they clean up the community. I mean, it's awesome. Makes them feel good, makes them feel connected. What's wrong with that? There's nothing. But I think, unfortunately, the ERG movement was a reaction to a lot of things that happened and through COVID, George Floyd, and subsequently, and it got really off track. It became very political. It became very
Like identity based.
identity based, right? And there are a lot of ERGs. Disabilities is one of my favorite ones in general because my son has a disability, but it's invisible. You won't know it when you see him, so he doesn't get discriminated in that way. There's other things that get in
Same.
his way, right? And so, unfortunately, with all the history that happened in the recent time, it kind of went a little sideways, but
Hmm.
it's coming back. And I'm not thinking any of the stuff that has happened really recently for that, but I think it's coming back because of ELA. We look. Just to throw some closing stats, there are 500 million people today that participate in ERGs around the world, at least. That's a conservative number. Anyone who wants to challenge me, I'm happy to send the numbers. There are 95% of the entities out there, USAA just released it, 95% of companies are still have some support for ERGs because they know how important they are. So despite what people are saying and these groups have survived all these years without any structure. We finally give them some structure. There's other companies out there that are also pushing to get these professionalized. And the very first trends report, Julie, that I wrote, the theme was modern labor unions in the making. And I'll tell you this, it's a way to get these employees feeling that they have some sense of control of their own careers, their own destiny, but it doesn't have that immediate negative,
Hmm.
you know, aggressive kind of action that labor unions were met that have had over the years. And so I think it can be a beautiful relationship between the employees and the employer if they're done right and they're done smart and they're done consistently and the everybody buys into the fact that we can get along as long as we have equity and rules in place,
Yeah.
governance.
Yeah. I love that. What a nice stat pack to land on, Alyssa. And you brought us full circle back to the need for humans to belong and have community and not to feel isolated alone and to have agency in our work. And yeah, I worked in a labor union environment for many years and it was like us versus them. And ERGs don't feel like that to me. It feels more like a bridge to each other. So love that. Love that. Okay, so ERGleadershipalliance.com, right? That's where we find the report, all this wonderful data you shared with us. Tell our listeners where else to follow your work.
Well, certainly on the ergleadership.com website, there's an info at email there. You can certainly send that in. If it's directed for me, it will get to me for sure. On LinkedIn, my name is on the screen. It's a little tricky to say. It's Alyssa Dver, Dver. I'm the only one in the world, so you can find me on LinkedIn and otherwise. And I love to hear feedback. We have a ton of free resources. Grab them, use them, but questions or comments about anything that we do, please, don't be shy, folks. That this is the way we make things better for everyone around the world as we hear from people who have a great idea or even a criticism. So bring it on.
Yeah, you got to hear it all. I know as someone that's shared ideas and questions with Alyssa over the years that she is quick to find a resource if she doesn't herself or her team have the answer. So, very thankful for the generous work and tools that you put out in the universe, mostly complimentary. So, organizations can absolutely partner with ERG Leadership Alliance more formally, but informally, there's lots of great resources on the website. So, be sure
Yeah,
to
and we
check it
do
out.
free events all the time, free virtual events all the time. So, it's a really nice way to meet other people in the space and just connect and yeah, constantly. So check the website and there's all kinds of stuff on it, the goodies. So
Awesome. Thanks, Alyssa.
thank you, Julie. I appreciate it. And thank you for the work that you do here on this pod. But overall, I know you're a fellow warrior, and I am grateful for that.
Thank you. Us both. We're allies in this.